A couple of months ago, a paper on the Cambrian Explosion came out, and it said something interesting I want to show you. So, geologists estimate that about 540 million years ago, most of the major animal body plans arose rapidly. And this has always been a conundrum for evolutionary theory. How did this happen? Why did this happen? Before then, life was pretty boring, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you had a lot of really neat, cool designs appearing rapidly, almost instantaneously in the fossil strata. How could all of these new designs have arisen? How could the new genomes have arisen? How could all the new genes have arisen that must have supported all of this change? Now, the fact is, it really doesn't matter how long of a time period you have. Random mutations are just not going to do the job. You could have billions of years, you could have trillions of years. You're not going to generate these new species, new genes, new genomes with random mutations. But this is kind of interesting because you compress it down to 10 or 20 million years. That's how long the Cambrian explosion is estimated to have been. And that makes the problem that much more challenging, that much more interesting. Kind of highlights the problem of evolution, even though the problem is really there all along. Some evolutionists have wondered, gee, maybe new genes didn't evolve in the Cambrian explosion. Maybe they were there all along in the earlier, simpler life forms, and what happened now was more creative regulation, the clever use of the genes. But that's really didn't really hold up that well. And this brings us to the new paper. So the new paper was looking at the bilaterians, animals with left-right symmetry. That's the left side is a mirror image of the right side, most of the animals that you think of today. They looked at these sorts of body plans and asked the question, what new genes can we positively identify as new supporting these animals? And they found 157 unique genes that were in these, that must have evolved in the Cambrian explosion. How did they arise? By the way, many of these genes supported the nervous system, which we've looked at recently. So, spoiler alert, the paper doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't explain how these genes arise. It just talks about how they came up with these genes and associated questions. So let me read you the conclusion here. They concluded that they have found 157 genes that are unique to bilaterians and, quote, probably originated in the bilaterian ancestor. So you've got all these bilaterian species. They all have an ancestor, a common ancestor, according to evolutionary theory, right? And these 157 genes must have arisen in this ancestor. So now we're compressing the time window down very short, and it's really making the problem for evolution just ridiculous. It's just outrageous. Now, that's not to say that biological cells don't do some pretty amazing things with their genomes, and they do. They adapt to conditions rapidly with genetic changes. That does happen, but that's not evolution. That's adaptation, and smart adaptation, intelligent adaptation to the conditions, rapid adaptation to conditions. That's not evolution. Evolution is random mutations under natural selection, and it just isn't working. And this paper is a great example. It's very specific. We got a specific number of genes, specific number of years, specific evolutionary tree here that they've identified. And it just highlights the fact that evolution is a non-starter from a scientific perspective. But religion drives science, and it matters.